Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Catholic Coffee Talk, a podcast where in between sips, we answer your Catholic questions. I'm your host, Father Brad Doyle, and I have with me our resident good Catholic, Peter Gone. Peter, what is up, my man?
Not too much. I just before I came over here, someone gave me a brand new mug, and I really like it.
Is it upside down?
Yeah, I'll get to that. It says there are two ways of waking up in the morning. One is to say, "Good morning, God," and the other is to say, "Good God morning."
Wow.
That is a joke from Fulton Sheen.
No way.
Yeah.
Dude, the dude was hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, he's great.
That is awesome. Why was it upside down?
It was a misprint. So we make these mugs at Catholic Company or Catholic Coffee or both. I don't know. And it was a misprint, which makes it just kind of that much funnier.
Because it's like I'm not ready for the morning. Like I'm just still my head's foggy. I'm upside down. I like it.
Yeah. So sometimes when we're making the prototypes, where we're testing to see like what the coloration is going to be on the new design, we have a lot of like misprints and broken things, and so they float around the office basically. And someone saw this and thought of me and gave it to me.
That kind of reminds me of what they do with, at least I heard this. I don't know if this is like I don't know, urban legend or whatever, but that like before a Super Bowl, companies will print a certain amount of T-shirts that say the Super Bowl winner, but they have to be ready for both teams to win.
Right.
And so they print a certain amount, and like the one that's not right is then not usable. You can't sell that. So they like donate it to third world countries or something like that, just like needy places. So like if you go somewhere like on a mission trip, you might see some kid running around with like a shirt that says the Atlanta Falcons won against the Patriots, and they didn't come back 23-3 or whatever.
Yeah.
28-3.
Oh, that was a great night.
Anyway, well, I've been doing good. I just had a meeting with the architects and arborists and my finance council head, and we are planning on building a PSR building, and there's a lot that goes into it. You got to get a bunch of permissions. The diocese has to look over you, but they told me not to do anything within 1 year of being a pastor, and it is now a month and almost 2 months, and I'm already building a $2 million building project. So
help me out. What do you mean a PSR building?
Oh, public school religion. So catechism classes.
Oh, okay. All right.
So like we have a catechism building, but it's like old, janky. It's kind of like going downhill, and we need new, and we need parking. So, and then we have these like a grove of camellias that is historic. There's very rare camellias you can't really find in a lot of places. And it's just really hard to find. And we have a grove of them. One of the priests, it was first planted, and then a priest kind of planted more in like the 1950s. So there's some that are 100 years old, some that are 50 years old or 70 years old. And we're just going to make that nicer. I mean, they're all kind of overgrown. And so I'm excited about it.
Sounds great. Sounds awesome. All right, I'm going to open up my coffee. I have canned coffee today because I'm a peasant.
Actually, he's lying. He's drinking a beer, but he couldn't say that on the podcast.
Come on, this is coffee. This is espresso with cream. I've never had this brand. We'll see if it's any good. There's
a lot of coffee stouts out there.
I prefer a coffee stout to a chocolate stout.
Me too. It's less sweet. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I think it's time for what's percolating.
Let's go.
At Catholic Coffee, our faith informs everything we do. Like Jesus, we strive to do all things well, so we can deliver a great cup of coffee from our family to yours. We at Catholic Coffee use only fresh, ethically sourced beans and do all of our roasting in small batches by hand right here in the USA. We work hard to craft delicious coffee presented in beautiful packaging that will bring beauty to your home and a prayer to your lips each time you brew a fresh pot. We also donate a portion of each sale to reputable and effective Catholic charities here in the U.S. So this is a purchase you can feel good about. For a limited time, Catholic Coffee is offering 10% off for listeners. Use code COFFEETALK at checkout to get 10% off your order of popular flavors like Our Lady of Guadalupe Mexican Mocha or the St. Michael Dark Roast. That's CatholicCoffee.com. Use code CoffeeTalk.
Where the questions percolating in your head get answers from the church's tradition. So what do we got today, Peter?
All right, we got a question from a listener named Mary who says, or who asks, is it ethical for a bishop to attempt to influence one's decision in the voting booth by means of implying that voting for a certain party will certainly cause you the loss of heaven and the pains of hell?
Mary, well, the way you asked this makes me feel like you have a particular instance or experience of this, but I'm going to first kind of address it in general, kind of like a Catholic voting ethic or forming of conscience of a Catholic. Like how does the church approach politics basically in a general sense? And then we'll kind of answer. And I think through that, we'll intuit the answer, and Mary, you probably will, and our listeners will intuit the answer of what you asked. But so first, I just wanted to start, Peter, with Matthew 22, because that's kind of a very famous section of the Gospels that's used when talking about politics. And, the Pharisees approached Jesus and they asked, "Teacher, we know that you are true and teach the way of God truthfully and care for no man, for you do not regard the position of men." First, they're buttering Jesus up, which is like very political. They're being good politicians. And tell us then what you think. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not? But Jesus, aware of their malice, said, "Why put me to the test, you hypocrites? Show me the money for the tax." And they brought him a coin. Jesus said to them, "Whose likeness and inscription is this?" They said, "Caesar's." Then he said to them, "Render therefore to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." When they heard it, they marveled, and they left him and went away. Okay, so the classic example of a scripture that's used, interpreted as how we as Christians are supposed to approach politics and society in general, and that is in an active way. Jesus obviously says, "Render to Caesar what is Caesar's," and that was like a very oppressive government. It wasn't a perfect form of government. It wasn't nice to the Hebrews, right? But so basically it kind of sets out a stage that like a Christian doesn't have to live in a utopia in order to cooperate with it or try to better it. We're trying to do the best we can to be good citizens wherever we find ourselves.
Right.
But people forget that this is also a commentary on how we live our Christian faith as well. Because he says, "Who's on this coin? It's Caesar's image. Well, render to Caesar what is Caesar's, pay your taxes, be a good citizen. But render to God what is God's," right? And well, whose image is imprinted on you, listener? Whose image is imprinted on you? Oh, wait, the Imago Dei. So you need to give your entire life to God. Have you ever heard about that, Peter?
No, I really like that though.
It's sick. It's sick.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. That sounds like something Fulton Sheen would go with, But I've heard that that when someone first pointed that out, that like we forget that really the point of this whole scene, this whole interaction with Jesus, what he was trying to say is less about necessarily like this politics thing, and it's more about in all areas of life, whether that's politics, society, at the church, not at the church, in your car, you render to God what's God's, and he has claim over your entire life. And so I think that's really cool. So that's kind of how I wanted to start. Like we should be good citizens, we should participate, but in all of our interactions, including in our politics, we should be Christians. We should be followers of Jesus. So if we're not being true followers of Jesus and how we're interacting with politics, how we're going about, if we first got to be citizens of heaven, basically, before we're citizens of earth. Another way of putting it is, when we go to heaven, we're not going to see an American flag. That should make people squirm a little, but we're not going to see an Italian flag either. We're not going to see a Russian flag or a Chinese flag, right? So like, it's not like I'm being anti-patriotic. We should be patriotic, but ultimately we're citizens of heaven, and we participate here on earth to the best of our ability.
Yeah, I'm with you. this is a little bit of a hot take, or this might be a little controversial, but
I like it. Bring it on, baby.
I always kind of push back against the people who put our nation of America ideologically in the center of their minds. I mean, there's an actual heresy called Americanism, which the popes have condemned very strongly, though not necessarily in recent days, though it's still around. But they think that the American church is the center of the church, right? Or that what's happening in America is automatically the most important thing that's happening in the world, and it isn't. And I think you just
that truth is based on a democracy.
Yeah, or that we can vote on what is right. No, we can't. We just can't. It's not a democracy. But yeah, so like you said, when you get to heaven, we're not going to see an American flag. Period.
We'll see Americans, the people who are American. We'll see people. Hopefully, we'll see all the nation. Hopefully. Well, yeah. I hope I go, and I hope you go, and we'll be holding down the fort. So anyway, so moving on though, because that's a kind of general broad view, but like the USCCB, I think one of the things they've done really well is express this relationship between the church and politics, or society in general, but particularly politics, with every year. And it usually comes up, and I'm glad we're doing this kind of not in a hot topic area or like in an election year necessarily.
Yeah, we're doing this on the downside, which is fine.
Yeah, so because it actually allows for a little more reasonable, calm, less charged, less biased reception of the church's teaching and the bishop's teaching, and y'all's questions out there. So this is from the most recent Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship. So it's all the bishops get together, they sign off on it. Some of the bishops work on it, some theologians, and they put it out there. What does it mean to be Catholic and vote? So paragraph 11 says this, I think it's really important. Some question whether it is appropriate for the church to play a role in the political life. And this kind of goes into your question, Mary, because it's like, what does a bishop ought to do?
Yeah.
Ought or ought he not do when it comes to politics? And some could have like a quietism idea where it's like, we shouldn't say anything about politics at all. Mm-hmm. And so the bishops address this. Some question whether it is appropriate for the church to play a role in political life. However, the obligation to teach the moral truths that should shape our lives, including our public lives, is central to the mission given to the church by Jesus Christ. Moreover, the United States Constitution protects the right of individual believers and religious bodies to participate and speak out without government interference, favoritism, or discrimination. Civil law should fully recognize and protect the right of the church and other institutions in civil society to participate in cultural, political, and economic life without being forced to abandon or ignore their central moral convictions. Okay, so what the bishops are saying is we don't have to, and we should not, one, stay out of politics altogether, or two, completely dichotomize ourselves, right? Split ourselves. We're Catholic. We have these ideals about, morality and the dignity of the human person, and this and that, and that shouldn't be some private thing we hold, and then we act in another way in the political sphere. We see this done with politicians often, right? They say, I'm Catholic, or I'm Christian, or I'm this, or I'm that. But that's me personally. But over here in political world, I can't do that. That's separation of church and state. Well, separation of church and state was not about protecting the state from the church. It was about protecting the church from the state. Thomas Jefferson, well, that was never in the Constitution. It was never in the Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson said it at a Baptist church when he was talking. He was giving a speech about religious liberties, and he uttered the phrase separation of church and state in reference to making sure the government does not impose itself on individual religious rights. So basically, we're saying, hey, we're protecting the church from the state, not the other way around, which is kind of important to know, right?
Yeah. I mean, even the first pilgrims, the first settlers in America, I mean, it was all these Protestant denominations mostly, except for Maryland. But they were all trying to escape persecution, right? You're not allowed to be, your whatever branch of Calvinism
Puritan.
was.
It was Puritans or Congregationalists. It was basically like a kind of another split from the Anglican Church.
Yeah. Talk about democratizing what is right and wrong. I mean, Congregationalists, they vote on their creed. That's, I don't know. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like it either. But they weren't allowed to exist.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Catholics too. I mean, Catholics are getting, drawn and quartered, sort of priests were getting drawn and quartered in England
at that time.
So like, that separation was to protect sometimes the very lives of religious believers and religious dissent.
But we're so persecuted now. It's like, oh, if you lived in the 1500s, you wouldn't last a second. I'm not talking about you, Peter. I'm talking about other people.
Yeah.
Okay, so Gaudium et Spes, moving onward. I'm getting feisty today.
It's all right.
Okay, Gaudium et Spes. This is cool. And this all comes from, they're quoting Gaudium et Spes in the bishop's document, but this is really awesome. Layman, so it talks about the responsibility of the public life, right, of layman, like the real, I guess, vineyard for the laborer that is a layperson is in the public sphere. Laymen should also know that it is generally the function of their well-formed Christian conscience to see that the divine law is inscribed in the life of the earthly city. Whoo! That is, so it's layperson's job. It is our Catholic politicians' jobs. Right? Not our clerics, right? It's not our bishop's job primarily to inscribe the divine law of life into the earthly city. It is the layperson's job. Y'all do have a great, important mission. From priests, they may look for spiritual light and nourishment. Since they have an active role to play in the whole life of the church, laymen are not only bound to penetrate the world with the Christian spirit. Goodness gracious, Gaudium et Spes is so good.
It is.
God, all these people who knock on the Second Vatican Council, but are also called to be witnesses to Christ in all things in the midst of human society. And then it talks about the bishop's role, right? Bishops, to whom is assigned the task of ruling the church of God, should together with their priests so preach the news of Christ that all the earthly activities of the faithful will be bathed in the light of the gospel. All pastors should remember that by their daily conduct and concern, they are revealing the face of the church to the world. And men will judge the power and truth of the Christian message thereby. So basically it's up to the bishops to inform the principles of, the common good of, the faith. And some of these principles, and most of them, are actually just held by the natural law. It's not necessarily needed. Divine revelation is not needed, but it's the bishops that uphold these principles. And then it's the layman's job to make sure that society forms itself around these universal principles of like the dignity of the human person, the solidarity of all people, the principle of subsidiarity, right? Or the common good. These are Catholic social doctrine principles that could be held by everybody and should be held by everybody, but it's the layman's job to put that into practice. The bishop's job is to present the principles, not necessarily the politics. Do you know about that distinction?
Yeah, totally.
So it's not partisan, it's principle, right? So we present the truth, not present a partisan, backing, because if we've learned anything is that, look, parties, institutions that are not, the church can turn on itself. Of course, a government organization of people can turn on the church in a hot second.
Right.
So,
but yeah, the simple fact of politics is that the parties will not save you. Yeah, that's my other hot take. The parties, I don't care what country you're talking about or what year you're talking about, or, here, now, over there, then, whenever. Politics aren't going to save you. Like it's in Revelation, even I think that, was it the Antichrist? Or kind of in Revelation, right? Everyone will look for a political solution to all of their problems. And like that is, even if you don't read that as an apocalypse, it's still like that a spirit that sets itself against the Spirit of Christ is one which seeks a political solution to all your problems, right? So if you lose sight of that, and then you get caught up in partisan politics and you like extend your soul into that as if that is going to save you, as if that is going to save our society, as if that is going to save your family, like you're kind of already missing the point, I think.
Yeah. And you're not being truly a good citizen because
Right.
you don't have the objectivity to hold the state, your society, your party. I mean, you could be a part of a party, but if you don't have some sort of foundation that your identity is truly found in something outside of that party, then you don't have the perspective in order to hold that party accountable, or
Right.
to hold that, politician accountable, right? I mean, we cannot sell out the church to any party. So I want to move on. My last little point, and then I'll answer the actual question, Mary. But this is about Catholics voting, and I think this is a question everyone asks every year.
Yes.
And this is the answer, and from the bishops at least. Catholics often face difficult choices about how to vote. Check mark. Got it. Yep, true. This is why it is so important to vote according to a well-formed conscience that perceives the proper relationship among moral goods. Okay, that's what we're doing right here. Sweet. You're listening to Catholic Coffee Talk. A Catholic cannot vote for a candidate. This is super important. Put your thinking caps on. A Catholic cannot vote for a candidate who favors a policy promoting an intrinsically evil act such as abortion, euthanasia, assisted suicide, deliberately subjected workers or the poor to subhuman living conditions, redefining marriage in ways that violate its essential meaning, or racist behavior, if the voter's intent is to support that position. That is a very, 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 very important distinction. How many berries was it?
2 or 3.
Hopefully 12, because I was going for like apostolic, but no, like, so because some priests, some people, some Catholic talking heads will say, with followers, will say a Catholic cannot vote for somebody if they support one of these positions. And it's not good that anyone supports any of these positions or any of these policies, and we should not. And we should be striving to provide the common good, which doesn't include euthanasia, which doesn't include assisted suicide, which doesn't include a changing, a redefining of marriage.
Yeah.
But
the question isn't, can politicians do this? The answer is no, they can't. Period. Morally speaking, the question, since they do anyway, how do we vote? How do we vote in response to that?
Exactly. And you can vote if you have 2, 3, 4, 5 choices, and they all, and let's say every single one of those 4 choices supports abortion. There's a moral decision you can make of abstaining from a vote. You can not vote. Or you could weigh the other platforms, the other ways in which they line up with Catholic social doctrine, and choose the one that your conscience has deemed a better choice for the common good, even if they support one of these and you're not doing it because you support abortion.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I'm not going to go too much in the weeds to that, but I guess, Mary, how does this answer your question? Is that a bishop who says a Catholic can never vote for a person of a particular party, that would be a bishop going against, I think, the Catholic social doctrine and against what the USCCB bishops in unity have given us this teaching through the Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship, that it's not necessarily, you can't vote for somebody who is a particular party. It's, you might choose to vote for someone because of their platform personally, their individual platform, or the way they've, match up to other people who are running for that office. But to make a blanket statement about an entire party would be, I don't think, fitting the Catholic social doctrine or the bishop's directives. And for an example, right, in our state in Louisiana, we have actually a blessing to have, I think, people who are a part of parties that break their national party line on certain issues. Our governor, John Bell Edwards, is a Democrat.
Yeah.
He was Democrat governor. Is pro-life. He's voted pro-life across the board.
He's pretty staunchly pro-life, if I
recall. Yeah, and he is. And he's actually like I mean, not making political statements, but he's like Second Amendment rights. Like he's for Second Amendment. So it's basically, there's a lot of ways in which he kind of crosses party boundaries. Is he perfect? No one's perfect.
Right.
You're not perfect either, listener. But it would be crazy to say like a Catholic can't vote for him because he's part of this party if he himself is trying to do his best to, and he's the best choice. I'm not saying he was or wasn't.
And you can tell me I'm wrong if I'm wrong here. But another example, this is kind of hypothetical. But it's I've seen it on my tickets voting. I won't say where, but I've lived in like a bunch of different states, so that's fake enough. But it was basically, the candidate was a Democrat. I don't know if the Democrat was pro-life. I'm willing to bet the answer was definitely not. By all accounts, this Democrat was someone who was holding the national kind of party public line, the stereotypical Democratic,
Yes.
Against the Catholic teaching on at least a few things. But it was a local office where the powers in question and the office in question really had no bearing on any of those issues, right? I didn't know if this person was pro-life or not because it didn't matter. It was like for running the post office or something, and I didn't have reason to believe there was going to be any action or any policy change that would go against my conscience. And then on the other side, you had someone who was pretty known to be corrupt. So how would someone vote in that instance?
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously I can't tell them how to vote in that instance, but I talk about.
Well, I just mean that's another example where you could vote for someone of a party which doesn't hold Catholic principles because it's not about the party; it's largely about the candidate.
It's about the candidate and the position they're trying to inhabit. So yeah, I think that's a good example. Mm-hmm. And to straight ticket voting is. Was never really envisioned by the forefathers. I think Washington himself.
There were two parties.
Yeah, Washington was pretty adamant about it, and here we go.
Washington's farewell address. Whatever you do, guys, don't break up into two parties.
Wait, if there was a movie, it would cut straight to like the the Biden-Trump election. It would be hilarious.
Before Washington even died, he said that whatever you do, don't break up into two parties. Before he got off the podium, we were split into two parties.
Oh man. Well, anyway, not to be cynical, we think there's great hope. I absolutely love my country. I love my state. I love my area of my state. And true patriotism is really about your homeland, right? And so just you as a Catholic out there listening, be active, especially on the local level too. Don't forget about local level. Don't forget about your city. Don't forget about your towns, your school districts, your state. It's very important because that's really where people live. That's where we are. Mm-hmm. And so hopefully that answers your question, Mary. But I'm sure we'll resurrect this podcast. What, in 3 years? What would it be? 3 years?
Yeah.
In 5 months when they start the whole rev up for the next election. Just joking. Okay, so well, anyway, it was kind of heavy, but so I think we need a little pick me up. I don't know. I think it's time for Bean of the Week.
Let's do it.
So what's your pick me up?
All right, my Bean of the Week. I want to give a shout out to The Pillar. I don't know if you've come across this publication.
I have.
Yeah, but they're like an independent Catholic reporting. Some people don't want to follow all of the stuff that's going on in the church, and that's fine. But I appreciate The Pillar because they come at it with a pretty objective view. They're not trying to put spin on it. They're telling you what's happening. So I appreciate that. And then they also have other little reflections that are sometimes nice. So they sent one out this week about St. Bartholomew and about how we don't really know much about him other than he was called by Christ and he was an apostle, and that's really important. But then talking about that or his patronage as someone, or how do I say these words? They held him up as a patron for the Catholics who don't get publicity, the quiet, faithful people who are abiding by their vocations day in and day out.
Like that.
And that just really stuck with me, and I really liked that. And so they did that, and they just had like an interview with an MLB player who is a Catholic and talking about what that's like for him. So they kind of got these nice little reflections too. So yeah, check them out.
And I appreciate them just as human beings, as friends. You know, Ed and JD.
Oh, do you know them?
Yeah, they were on my previous podcast, The Quizzical Papist. Did some work with them on the game section of their when they were with Catholic News Agency,
nice.
the editor's desk. But what I really appreciate about them is first their faithfulness. They're good Catholic men, which kind of just really paints their work, right? Their mission, and that they're not afraid to, as good. They kind of remind me of St. Thomas More. St. Thomas More was faithful, loving, loved the church, loved Holy Mother Church, but also was like critical of her blemishes, right? Of her ways that the people of the church could grow. It was very sober, St. Thomas More was, about the fallenness of individuals, clerics included, bishops included. And so JD and Ed have just a fantastic balance, I believe, of recognizing the fallenness of the human nature, and then but not letting it take them outside of communion with the church or ruin their faith. And it's, if you might, listener, if you find yourself in a situation where you're kind of depressed about, whenever you hear about sad things in the church, good, you should be slightly sad, but go read The Pillar and take their ways of approaching it, and I think it'll be refreshing for you.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what I was trying to say, where they're not these journalists who are, who think bringing the sins of the church into the light. I mean, that's a good thing, but they're not hellraisers for the sake of being hellraisers. They're not bringing stuff up because they assume that if we can, criticize the bishops, that is automatically good. I think sometimes there's this idea that if we're criticizing the church, we're automatically making it better, and that's not true.
And they're independent, so there's not a lot of their financial backing is not hooked to a certain organization.
They're not going for clicks either. They're not going for clickbait. But at the same time, they do not shy away from speaking the truth.
They don't.
So there's
not do that.
It's not much of a pick me up, but I mean, if you're looking for good, just Catholic reporting, check out The Pillar.
Cool. Well, I'll do the pick. Well, mine's kind of depressing too, actually. Goodness gracious.
Wow, we're over 3 today.
So this is The Donkey. It was actually awesome. It's got a good ending. Nice. The Donkey by G.K. Chesterton, which again, I think is just sometimes when we can express truths in a different media that it might be clearer, right? Through art, through poetry. And The Donkey is a first person poem written from the donkey's perspective, and the donkey being like a representative of the gritty, ugly, sinful, maybe even reality of human nature, but that Jesus isn't afraid of it. And so it's written from the donkey that he rode into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday. He says, from the donkey's perspective, when fishes flew and forests walked, and figs grew upon thorn, some moment when the moon was blood, then surely I was born. With monstrous head and sickening cry, and ears like errant wings, the devil's walking parody on all four-footed things. The tattered outlaw of the earth, of ancient crooked will, starve, scourge, deride me, I am dumb, I keep my secret still. Fools, for I also had my hour, one far fierce hour and sweet. There was a shout about my ears and palms before my feet. If you don't have goose pimples right now, you are not human.
That's good.
Dude, that is sick. I'm not even going to describe it. Can't talk about it more. Go read more Chesterton. Man was brilliant. Man knew what he was doing. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's so good. Okay. Go be a redeemed donkey out there. Okay. You've been listening to Catholic Coffee Talk with me, Father Brad, and our resident good Catholic, Peter Gone. Coffee Talk is brought to you by the Catholic Company. It's part of the Good Catholic Podcast Cooperative. If this episode has blessed you, you can find more content at goodcatholic.com. As always, we ask you to leave a review, a rating, share the pod with a friend, or simply pray for us in our mission. If you have a question of your own that has been percolating, shoot us an email at askapriest@goodcatholic.com, or you can leave a voice message at speakpipe.com/Catholic Coffee Talk. Please, no one's done this yet, but we want to hear your voice. We want to hear you speak the words, right? We're incarnational people. We need to hear your voice. So speakpipe.com/Catholic Coffee Talk. We might feature your message on a future episode, and we'll answer all the questions to the best of our ability. To quote the psalmist, taste and see that the Lord is good. Continue to drink deeply from our great faith. We'll talk next week. Peace.